Welcome back friends to this online lecture series on earthquake resistant design of structures. Now in the previous lectures we have been discussing the performance of masonry buildings under the effect of lateral loads. From this lecture onwards we will be discussing regarding the performance of frame structure, that is RCC buildings under the effect of lateral loads. So let us start today's discussion where we will be focusing on the key components of a frame structure building. Then we will be looking at the different aspects of detailing that are required for good performance of the RCC structure. We will also be discussing the importance of beam, column and slab in smooth transfer of lateral forces from the top level to the bottom of the building. And lastly, we will be also discussing regarding the earthquake resistant feature, that is the strength hierarchy of RCC buildings. Right. So in case of masonry buildings that we had discussed last time, if you remember, then we discussed that the roof, the wall and the foundation are going to play an important role in order to ensure the smooth transfer of horizontal forces from the top level to the soil. Right. So similarly, when we talk about the RCC buildings or the frame structures, then we know that the four key components of the RCC buildings are beam, column, slab and the walls. Right. Now we know that in case of, if you talk about purely about the load transfer mechanism, then in that case the beams and columns are going to play an important role, followed by slab. Right. The walls that are going to be there, these walls are going to be just acting as a partition walls and they are not going to take any of the parts in the load transfer mechanism. Right. Until and unless you have considered these walls as infill walls and these walls are properly connected to the periphery of the columns and the beams above and below, then and only then it can be considered as part of the load transfer mechanism. Otherwise, in regular cases, what is going to happen is that the vertical load is going to be purely transferred from the columns to the foundation and from the foundation to the soil below. Right. So if you talk about the four key components, as we have seen, then the four key components of the building are going to be beam, column, slab and the walls. Right. And these four components are going to ensure the smooth transfer of load, whether it is going to be lateral load or it is going to be vertical load in case of RCC buildings. Right. And that is what we have shown. You can see a typical sketch of a RCC building over here, multi-story building, as shown in this particular figure over here. Now what happens is that, as we have seen in case of the masonry buildings also, whenever the ground motion is going to take place, then due to this ground shaking, the inertia force, the earthquake forces seismic waves are going to be generated, and these seismic waves will generate the earthquake forces. Now whenever the earthquake force is induced, then as a result of that, the inertia force will be generated in the building. Right. So in case of masonry buildings, we saw that the inertia force was concentrated at the roof level. In case of, now we are talking about RCC buildings. So in case of RCC building, we know that it is going to be concentrated wherever the position of mass is going to be there. So in case of RCC buildings, the mass is concentrated at the floor level. So as a result of that, we can say that different inertia forces depending upon the quantum of mass are going to be concentrated along the height of the building. So if I am talking about the multi-story building that I have shown over here, then at each and every floor that is shown over here, the concentration of mass is going to be there due to the generation of inertia forces. Why these inertia forces and masses are related? Because inertia forces basically, if you talk about the layman language, if you talk in layman language about the definition of inertia forces or the formula of inertia forces, then it is equal to F is equal to ma. That is, force is directly proportional to mass. So that is why we can say that wherever the floor is going to be there and wherever the mass is going to be there, at that same level the inertia forces are going to be concentrated. And that is why you can say that the inertia forces in residential buildings or RCC buildings is going to be concentrated along the height of the building at different floors. And from this floor level, these horizontal forces are to be transferred by means of beam, column and the slab. And that is what we are going to discuss in this particular lecture today, that how the beam, column and slab are going to help us in smooth transfer of lateral forces from the top of the building to the foundation level and to the soil below. Right. So now what is going to happen in case of RCC buildings, that once the inertia forces are generated, we know that the inertia forces are a component of mass, and as we know that more the mass in the building or more the dead load in the building, more is going to be the mass. and more the mass, as a result of that, more earthquake force is going to be there. And as we have discussed the sequence, that the load transfer mechanism is going to be from top to bottom. So as a result of that, we can say that the inertia forces or the base shear that will be generated due to the effect of this weight that is going to be there in the building above is going to be more concentrated at the lower level, that is towards the ground, because by all the forces are going to be transferred from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the soil below. Right? So as a result of that, what happens is that if we talk about the distribution of earthquake forces, then as you can see in this particular figure over here, the maximum base shear will be observed at the base level. Then as you keep on increasing in height, then the intensity of the base shear or the quantum of the base shear will be reduced. Why? Because the weight is going to reduce as we go up, and as the weight is going to reduce, then as a result of that, the seismic weight is also going to reduce, and as seismic weight is getting reduced, then as a result of that, the base shear is also going to get reduced, and when base shear is reduced, then this particular figure or this particular type of graph that is shown over here is going to be observed. Right? So in case of RCC buildings, the concentration of base shear is going to be maximum at the base level, and it is going to be least at the roof level. And as a result of this, the columns or the shear walls that are going to be designed at the floor level, that is the base level, that is near to the ground or the plinth, are going to have larger cross section or larger value of reinforcement as compared to the cross sections along the height of the building. Right? Next, we talk about the role of the floor slabs and the masonry walls. As we have discussed that beam, column and slab are the three basic components which are going to play a key role in the smooth transfer of horizontal forces from the roof level to the foundation in case of RCC buildings. So, when this particular, any RCC building is going to get subjected to the lateral loads, then what is going to happen is that the beams and the slabs are monolithic casted. We all know that, right? That beams and slabs are casted monolithically. So, two types of movements are discussed for slabs over here. First movement is the vertical movement, and second movement is the horizontal movement. And if you go back to our earlier lectures where we have discussed regarding out of plane bending and in plane bending, then we can say that the force that is going to have, or the deflection that is going to have, act in the along the larger dimension of the element, that is the larger direction, that is along the length of the slab, it is going to be in plane direction, and if it is going to act perpendicular to the slab or the cross section of the slab, then it is known as the out of plane direction. Right? So two types of behavior are discussed for slab. First is the out of plane behavior, second is known as the in plane behavior. So in the first figure that is shown, the first figure is showing the out of plane behavior. Now how this out of plane behavior will come into picture? Whenever the vertical load will be applied on the building, then as a result of this vertical load, the load will be transferred from the vertical load will be transferred from the slab to the beams. And once the beams will be subjected to vertical load, then these beams are going to undergo deflection. And when these beams will undergo vertical deflection, and since the beam and the slab are going to be casted monolithically with one another, then as a result of that, there is going to be vertical deflection or slight twisting of the slab component also, which can be seen in the first figure that is shown. Now this movement that will be there, this particular movement of the slab is known as out of plane movement. Why? Because it is acting along the direction of the cross section, which is the minor dimension. Right? We are focusing on the major dimension. The major dimension is known as the in plane bending, and the minor dimension, the movement along the minor dimension, is known as the out of plane bending or out of plane displacement. So in the first figure, as you can see over here, the out of plane displacement of the slab is shown, right? And this out of plane displacement of slab will be contributed due to the vertical deflection of the beam, because beam and slab are monolithically casted. So if the beam will deflect, then since the beam and the slab both are connected to each other, as a result of that, the slab will also undergo some kind of deformation, and this deformation will be also known as out of plane bending of the slab. Second is known as the in plane movement or the in plane displacement or in plane bending of the slab. Now when this particular type of scenario will be observed, whenever the earthquake force will be applied at the beam column junction, then what is going to happen is that the columns are going to undergo deflection. If the force is applied in x direction, then the columns will move in the x direction. If the force is applied in z direction, then the columns are likely to move in z direction. Now beam and column junction is also done. Beam and column junction is also casted monolithically. So what is going to happen is that whenever the column will undergo displacement, then due to the displacement of the columns, the beams are also likely to undergo displacement in the particular direction, whether it is x direction or z direction. And whenever the beams will undergo displacement, then as a result of that, the beam and slab are monolithic casted. So as a result of that, along with the movement of the beam, the slabs are going to be moved. So if you understand or if you look at the chronology of the movement, then first the columns will displace, then beams will displace, and then the slab will displace. But what is going to happen is that if there is a large floor plate as it is shown over here, and if the displacement is in the direction or is along the major direction of the or the length of the slab, then as a result of that, there is lot of stiffness that is available in the direction, and due to this large amount of stiffness that is available, then as a result of that, there will be only a minor movement of slab as compared to that of columns in the beam, and that is why the in-plane movement of the slab is going to be one of the reasons through which the lateral forces are going to be transferred from one end of the building to the other end of the building. And when this particular action takes place, that is, the beam column forces are applied at one particular end of the building, and then they travel through this displacement of slab to the other end of the building, then this particular action is known as rigid diaphragm action. And this rigid diaphragm action is attributed to the in-plane stiffness of the slab that is going to be there. Now this in-plane stiffness is going to be more if the entire slab is a solid slab. But if you have a central cutout, then the in-plane stiffness of slab is going to be greatly reduced. And if it is going to be greatly reduced, then the effect of rigid diaphragm is going to be less. And as a result of that, there is a chance that uneven distribution of lateral forces is also likely to take place. Right? So solid slab and in-plane stiffness of slab, solid slab and rigid diaphragm action are greatly connected to each other. Right? Now the last element we talk about is the masonry. Now as I've already told you that masonry is not going to take any of the part in taking the vertical load. But however, it may have some role to play in case of horizontal load or the lateral load. Why? Because the sequence of construction is such that first the columns are done, then beam and the slab is casted. Once the beam and the slab is casted and the columns have achieved sufficient strength, then the vertical space between the two floors or the vertical space between the two slabs is filled by means of these masonry walls. And these masonry walls may be planned according to the functional utility of the building. Right? So when these masonry walls will be, these masonry units or these infill walls, these walls are also known as infill walls. So when these infill walls will be constructed, then they are not properly connected to the adjacent periphery of the columns or the beams that are above and below. So as a result of that, the possibility is that whenever the lateral forces will be acting, and as a result of that there will be movement in the building, then as a result of that cracks are likely to be seen at the corners of the wall and the columns. So as you can see in this particular figure over here, the enlarged view of one particular story is shown, where columns are shown on the two sides, beams are shown at top and bottom, and you can see that whenever this particular column is going to get deflected from left to right, then as a result of that the compression force will be transferred to the infill walls. And when that will happen, what is going to happen is that the top end of the columns are going to move from left to right, the bottom ends of the columns are going to move in the other direction, that is from right to left. And as a result of that, you can see that an entire couple is generated, and due to this generation of a couple, there will be a tension force in the top components and compression force in the bottom components. So when this type of behavior will take place, then as a result of that, you can see that the cracks or voids will be seen between the junctions of the beam column junction and the masonry. So as you can see in the figure, there is a possibility that the walls may fracture from the corners of the beam column junction, or you can see that diagonal cracks may also be observed in case of walls. Why? Because the tensile strength of wall is very less, tensile strength of brick or masonry is very less as compared to compressive strength. It is a brittle material, right? So what is going to happen is it is going to have good compressive strength, but it is not going to have tensile strength. So whenever this couple is going to get generated, then the top half of the building is going to be under tension, the bottom portion is going to be under compression. So as a result of that, the cracks are going to be likely to be observed in the top portion, and also gaps may be formed between the bricks and the beam column joints. Right, now coming to the strength hierarchy, that which of the elements in this out of these three elements, that is beam, column and slabs, which form the major components for transfer of lateral forces from the top of the building to the bottom, should be stronger and which should be weaker. But before going to that, let us try and understand the difference in the behavior of a building when it is going to be subjected to lateral load and when it is going to subjected to the gravitational load or the vertical load. So as you can see in this figure over here, the first figure is indicating that the load is applied only in the vertical direction, that is in the gravity direction. So whenever the load will be applied in the vertical direction, as you can see that portal frame is shown, and top of the portal frame the UDL is applied. So when UDL is applied, the beam will undergo the deflection. When the beam will undergo deflection, then as a result of that, moment will develop at the beam column junction, and when the moment will develop at the beam column junction, then from that particular junction the moment will be transferred to the bottom section, and then from the bottom section it will be transferred to the soil below. So what is happening here, the sequence is fixed, that the vertical member will undergo deflection, the horizontal member will undergo deflection first. Due to the deflection of horizontal member, moment will be generated. That moment will be generated at beam column junction. From the beam column junction, the moment will be transferred to the base level, and the base has to be designed to resist the vertical load also as well as the moment also. So it is pretty much simple in case of vertical loads or the gravity loads. Right? There is no possibility of change in the direction, that is sagging, hogging is not possible. Positive, negative is not possible. Change in the sign convention or change in the direction of moment diagram is also not possible. But can we say the same thing, or can we expect the same kind of behavior for lateral loads? Then the answer is no. So in the second case that is shown in the figure over here, only horizontal load is applied to the portal frame, and that horizontal force is applied from left direction to the right. So it is applied from the left to right. So when this particular force will be applied from left to right, then the portal frame will undergo horizontal sway or horizontal displacement, as you can see in this particular figure. So whenever the force will be applied from left to right, the column on the left is going to undergo tension and column on the right is going to undergo compression. But in case of horizontal forces, we always consider the reversal of stresses. That is, when we calculate the horizontal forces, we consider that the force is applied once from positive x direction, and second time from the negative x direction, and same positive z direction and negative z direction. Right? So what is going to happen is that whenever the force will be considered from the other direction, that is the third figure that you can see over here. So in the third figure, you can see that the horizontal force is applied from right to left. So when the force will be applied from right to left, then as a result of that, the column on the right side is going to undergo tension, and the column on the left side is going to remain in the compression. So now you can see the situation is entirely reversed as compared to the first case. In the first case, the left column was in tension, whereas in the second case, the right column is under tension. Now what is going to happen in case of the moment diagram? So two moment diagrams are shown. So you can see that the tension phase of the column is changing, right? Once we have in the first figure, that is the fourth figure that is shown. In the fourth figure, you can see that the tension phase is on the outside, right? Whereas in the fifth case, you can see that the tension phase has gone towards the inside, right? So as a result of that, you can see that the tension phase is also changing, and also the direction of movements is also changing. So that is a change in the moment diagram as well. So as a result of that, the reversal of stresses has to be considered a very important part of the lateral load distribution, and the columns have to be designed in such a manner that these columns should be able to resist, beams and columns both should be able to resist the forces whichever is applied in from the either of the directions, that is from the positive x, negative x, positive z or negative z. And now we have the third direction also, which is known as the vertical direction also. Earlier we used to consider the vertical direction of earthquake forces only for a limited number of cases, such as cantilevers or overhanging portions or such that. Now the code has suggested that vertical component of the earthquake has to be also considered. So all these three components, that is x, y and z components, have to be carefully applied to the model of the building that you are going to design, and the analysis also needs to take into consideration the effect of reversal of stresses, right? So it is going to be a very important aspect in the designing of building for lateral loads. Now coming to the last aspect is regarding the strength hierarchy. So as we have seen that the lateral force is going to be applied to the beam column joint. From the beam column joint, the force is going to be transferred to the beam. The beam is going to undergo displacement. Beam will create a moment, and that moment will be transferred to the column. From the column, the force will be transferred to the foundation. Right? So if we are okay with this particular sequence, and if we are able to design or we are able to observe this kind of behavior on site, where first the beam undergoes deflection or displacement, due to this displacement or deflection of the beam column joint will undergo the moment. From the moment, the tension compression force will be generated. This tension compression force will be divided into different columns, and from these columns, the load will be transferred to the foundation below. So that means the column should be stronger than beams. Why? Because the beams are going to transfer the force to column. So if the column is not having that capacity, axial capacity to carry the load that is transferred by beams, then as a result of that, the good performance of building cannot be achieved. So we can say that the strength of the column has to be more as compared to that of the beams. Secondly, the columns have to transfer the load to the foundation. So that means the foundation should be stronger as compared to that of the column. Why? Because all the entire load from the entire height of the building is going to be transferred to the foundation, and from the foundation, the load is going to get transferred to the soil. So we can say that column has to be stronger as compared to that of beam, and foundation has to be stronger as compared to that of the columns. And at the same time, the beam column joint should also have the capacity to transfer these forces carefully, and the junction of column and footing should be designed in such a manner that it should also be able to resist the forces or transfer the forces that are coming from the top of the building. Right? So detailing of the joint also plays an equivalent role in enhancing the performance of building under the effect of vertical load or horizontal loads. Right? So that is why we come to the conclusion that in order to ensure good performance of building, the column should be strong and foundation should be even stronger as compared to that of the columns. And if we keep this philosophy in mind, then as a result of that, a particular type of behavior will be observed in case of buildings, and that particular behavior is known as strong column weak beam. Right? So two figures are shown over here, where in the first figure the damage or displacement of deformation is shown locally at the beam level, and in the second figure the damage is shown in the columns. Now what is going to be the difference in the behavior of the building, that can be clearly seen from these two figures. So in the first figure, where the beams are damaged locally at different floor levels, then as a result of that the columns are going to remain intact, and what is going to happen is that there will be large deformation in the columns, right? And if proper detailing of these columns are done as per the ductile detailing code, then it will undergo large deformation, but the building will not collapse, right? So whatever the collapse will be there, or whatever the damage in the building, or whatever deformation that will be observed in the building, will be distributed evenly or sufficiently equal in along the height of the building. But in the second case that is there, where the failure or the damage or deformation is observed locally in one of the floor heights. So as you can see in this particular figure over here, the column at top, the column of a ground story are having deformation at the bottom and top level. So as a result of that, what is going to happen is that when this type of particular deformation is going to take place, then it is the deformation of the columns. And since the columns are going to be the global element, so as a result of this global element, the top collapse of the entire collapse of the building above is also likely possible, even though the damage is being done as a very local level, but it is going to have a significant effect. Why? Because columns are the main element, and these main elements, due to these columns only, the performance of the buildings can be enhanced or can be kept stable. So as a result of that, you can say that the strong column weak beam theory is accepted and weak column strong beam theory is rejected. Why? Because it is allowed to undergo large displacement, because the design philosophy is clearly saying that under no circumstances the building should collapse. So if you are going to have strong column weak beam theory, then large deformations are going to be possible. Structural and non-structural damage is also likely to be possible, but total collapse of the building is not possible, or it can be avoided. But if weak column and strong beam theory is applied, then in that case what is going to happen is that the total collapse of the building is likely to be possible. And if total collapse of the building is happening, then it is against the design philosophy that is suggested by IS 1893. So these are all different features or different types of issues or different types of aspects that we need to keep in mind while doing the detailing or designing of RCC buildings subjected to lateral loads. We will be further discussing on this performance of RCC buildings, and will be also taking into consideration the several other earthquake resistant features that should be incorporated in the designing of a building in order to enhance its performance under the effect of lateral loads in the upcoming lectures. Stay tuned for the further lecture series. Thank you.